Hi, my name is Ross Allmark, and I'm the Vice President for Transformations at Vice Media Group. We've been using Workfront for 2.5 years now, I believe, across largely focused inside our creative agency, which is called Virtue. We use it basically for project management, budget management, the tracking of hours, for managing timelines and proofing, and we also have integrated it with a lot of our other systems as well for various purposes. This is my AtApp video today. It is my first, and I'm going to tell you about the AFA Burn Report solution. The sort of a balance of investment when you deal with limitations. So I think the way that I tend to think about this, my general rule of thumb with systems is configure, don't customize, right? So as far as you can, you try and do everything you can within the bounds of a configuration of an off-the-shelf solution. And it's lots of yeah, exactly. I mean, that tends to be the ideal situation. But you always come up against a certain point where no solution is going to match the path dependencies and mental models within your organization. So you have to make a bit of a call at a certain point about whether you invest in a layer of customization to bring the platform to other people, or you try and bring other people to the platform, and you've got to try and meet in the middle. And I think for us, it was a bit of a meet in the middle thing, but one of the areas where it did have to be absolutely bang on was in this burn report. So this was one area where I need to say, okay, for my stakeholders in finance and my stakeholders in operations, I need to make sure that this is delivering exactly in the way that they need it. So that's why it was the right threshold for us to do something a bit more custom here and begin working on this together. If you can get from Workfront and many other project management tools just a really clean idea of how busy your team is, both looking into the future if you plan your projects well, and looking into the past if you're looking at hours tracked on a timesheet, right? But what those figures don't tell you in a really neat way is whether anyone has paid them for those hours. So you might look at a team and go, wow, they're really busy. And then on further inspection, you find out they're busy on pitches, internal initiatives. Maybe they've clocked a bunch of time on meetings, etc. And it's not reflected in what people have actually paid you to do. And that's what the burn report gets you. And in a time like this, it's not good enough just to say, hey, my teams are busy. Everyone's teams are busy. It's my teams are profitable. It's my team is making a margin on the work they're doing. That delivering this program, this portfolio, or this project is going to bring us back that money. And you just can't see that through any other way than looking at the project burn.
Before you and I met, or as we met, if you could just talk through some of these bullet points.
I'll give you the context, Doug. So when we got to roll out Workfront initially, the idea was basically to bring together in a really coherent kind of way, firstly projects, so an idea of tasks, then budgets, so the financial stuff, and then resourcing, so hours. And we really wanted to get a handle on what people were doing, whether it was bringing us the rewards we needed, whether we were making good margins, whether people were using their time productively. So it was really, really much more than just a project tracker or even some of the more useful stuff like the proofing, etc. that they have in there. It was really about us getting control over what was going on in the business, and then using that as a platform to integrate and automate and make the process of understanding what was going on as easy and clear as possible. So we've gone through, I think when we spoke to you, maybe 2 years or 18 months or 2 years of this process. Workfront was deployed, and I kind of got to the point with it where I realized that some quite important stuff that we needed, because of very specific stuff in our config that didn't come up during pre-sale, was actually the system wasn't able to do it. So it triggered a little bit of a panic in me, to be completely honest, as the primary sponsor of this project, that we weren't going to quite get to where we needed to be. And the thing that was really causing the issue is inside Workfront, in a project, you have a tab called utilization. And that's going to show you basically the budget that was approved for the project. And then it's going to show you what how many of the hours you've used of that budget, etc. And give you a sense of how the project is performing versus what was originally budgeted. Now, when we did our deployment, we didn't use the budgeting feature inside Workfront, which is tied to something called business cases, because our use case and the number of job roles we have in our system, which is around 300, prohibited us from doing that. We couldn't use it at all. So we had this utilization tab that was just showing up zero budget for everything and everything in the red, which is obviously meaning we're missing quite badly an important piece of the puzzle. And I didn't really realize it until we got, we committed hundreds or thousands of hours and hundreds and thousands of pounds to this project. So when I came to you, Doug, I was really like, oh my God, I need someone to help us with this and get us this last 5%, getting this key report that we need and giving us that visibility. And then as we got into it, not to put the cart before the horse, I also started noticing, limitations inside the utilization view that we were surpassing with this, that actually we could build something that was going to be not only would meet the requirements that were missed by the utilization tab, but actually exceed them. And the place that I really wanted to get to is removing the need for lots of manual compiling of hours and putting things together in spreadsheets that take people hours, and have people just clicking that button and getting them a clear view on project performance. So yeah, that was what I think that was the main challenge. It was to sum it up, the shortcomings of the utilization tab, and then the need for us to really clearly understand, with the project, what have we sold? What is the current forecast? What are the actuals? And how do all those things relate to each other in a way that's actionable for project owners and FP&A and operations can keep an eye on to make sure that things aren't going in a bad direction.
Great. To pick on that last point a little bit, if I may, I was Skype chatting with a buddy of mine, asking him if I could show him this solution. He's another consultant for a friendly competitor. And I think I caught him busy. I'll try him again. But his immediate reaction was, can't be done. There needs to be separation of church and state. Workfront's role in the universe is to organize the work, but then all of the work that's done must, in his opinion, be sent to your financial system of record, where it's then cleansed and vetted and blessed and locked in and invoiced. And then the result of that should then be pushed back into Workfront for comparison. Now, obviously, even with Fusion and Minor Miracles, there's time delays in that cycle. But could you speak to just generically how the idea of having real-time information within Workfront fit into your logic? How important was that kind of immediate feedback to make quick decisions?
You mean, it sounds like your friend is probably an accountant, and it sounds like your friend has probably never run a project in his life. So I'm gonna make a few harsh judgments on that man.
I'll introduce you another time.
Oh, mate, give me 2 pints, and I'll give you 45 minutes of brainwashing on how wrong that man is. So basically, I think there's what you're always trying to do is drive good decision making in the people doing the work, right? So for me, there's always 2 levels of financial insight. There is what goes on your books, which is obviously has to be locked in, signed, sealed, and delivered, stamped. It's like it's a little bit like history versus journalism, right? This is what the truth is, right? Forever and ever. What a project owner needs to see is the first draft of that. They need to see the version of that of this is the direction things are going. And it doesn't have to be for that project manager perfect. It just needs to be good enough for them to make good decisions. So they need to understand where things are trending. Now, a lot of the fight I had with this is people were like, hey, well, let's look at reports out of NetSuite. Now, I don't know about anyone else's business, but like ours, certainly your average project owner is not someone who should be inside our ERP. They're not someone who should be pulling reports. They're probably not someone who should be compiling things in a spreadsheet, to be honest. They're people who are there to deliver work. Yeah, exactly. And dynamically, they're dealing with clients, etc. We don't want them in that world. What we want is to put information as easily and clearly in front of them with the lowest amount of friction so that they can make those decisions in the moment. You want them almost in a way to say they're on a call with a client and like the client's asked them a challenging question or they're trying to change something. They can do 3 clicks and they can just see what's happening in their project. They can move things around in real time, see how that's going to impact stuff, which the Burn Report does. And that's going to enable them to give them, make good decisions. And with that kind of empowerment comes the accountability, where we always say, well, you always can see where these things are going, pal. And like, if they're going badly, they can't go, oh, well, it's over there. Finance didn't tell me this. It's right there, easy to surface. And there's no excuse not to make good financial decisions. You mean not with Burn Report, because that's just about to roll out, but already giving people that level of empowerment, you start to see those changes in behavior. And they realize if something goes wrong, not only should they have seen it, but you can see that they didn't see it. And that drives good behavior, right? It's the right incentives for your teams.
Absolutely. Just so people get a sense of how, in this case at least, other solutions might be done or tackled differently. But how did we get on the same page and kind of define and set what the scope would be for this first phase, as you recall?
So because we were coming from a place where we had a feature in Workfront that wasn't doing what we wanted it to do, but could potentially could have done it quite well with a few changes, we were in the sort of fortuitous position of having a bit of a leg up with the scoping. In that I think I came to you and said, hey, look, this is the utilization report. Here's how it works, and here's how it doesn't work. Right. And this is the problem we're trying to solve for. And here's the gap. Yeah, exactly. And then we were able to say, okay, well, this is the core of what we want. And then as we went through, we iterated on that. So we moved past a little bit what the utilization tab did. In the final version of ours, which might be different from maybe the off-the-shelf version, we landed on the columns that are in everything, plus a projected landing point section that actually projected things into the future that you don't have inside the utilization panel. And that's something that our guys really, really love, but I don't want to go too down that rabbit hole.
We'll hit that later, harder.
We'll hit that bit later. But yeah, it was really about finding, like we had the initial jumping off point of a very clear feature that wasn't working. We sat down, we went through it. Then you created a very good mock-up of how it could work. So you created a mock inside a spreadsheet. I sat down and wrote notes on that and added some columns, changed some language, etc., which is a really nice way of working because it's a bit more hands-on. You can sit there and look at what a finished version might feel like and play around it. And then I think we just went backwards and forwards a few times, right? Adding in a few different things. And I think I added in maybe the margin overview at the top or something like that. I requested from you guys to give us that top line understanding of the margin we're making on hours, which is so important for something like this. And then you built the exact thing that was in the spreadsheet, which was incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, for us both. That was a long run. Just back to the mock-up for a minute. And I'd forgotten this part, but I think you're reminding me, that was strictly mock, right? We just conceptually put down, if these were the numbers, this is how it would work. We weren't drawing on something that you had been working around using exports to Excel and doing it on the side, were you? Okay.
No, well, I had in my mind what one of those, because we do have one of those sheets, and we could have used that as the jumping off point, but we used the utilization pane as a jumping off point. And then what we did is looking at, I sort of mapped a little bit of the logic that I had in my head against that, and as we were going against the mock that you made, and as we went backwards and forwards, I think we added and removed a few columns, defined the maths that we were going to use for each section, and move from there. As we were going through, we knew we only had a certain amount of budget for your guys' time. And as you went through, we looked at the different functionality and we basically triaged. So we said, okay, this we definitely need. That might be nice to have. And that was where I think for a systems owner and as a client, it's so important to understand the use case and like have lived inside that, so you know what you can lose in the development. Because as you go through something like this, we pick up lots of different threads, and it's like, oh well, that could be an interesting thing for this, and for many companies it might be. But for us, trying to race towards a landing point for our budget, there were certain things we had to exclude, and I think we had quite a few discussions around, should it just be hours or should we go into the cost?
Dollars. Oh, that was a big one, right? That's right. We were going to initially only go with hours, weren't we? And oh my gosh,
are you going to go with hours?
We're so far past that now.
Exactly. I mean, hours might have worked for a project manager. Again, talking a bit about how much information does a project manager need. There is a world where you could probably do it on hours. It's just you wouldn't have got a lot of the additional utility that we might get out of this if we just did it that way. If it was purely like, hey, should we stop putting creative directors on this job because they have trapped way too many hours over the weekend trying to nail this thing and it's out of control? You could probably just do that with hours, but you wouldn't be able to make decisions like, hey, well, maybe we lose the ECD on this because they're very expensive and bring in an associate creative director and they can try and run this thing home and that will get us under budget. So you get the first half of that detail, but not the second.
Right, exactly. Can you remind me, more for the record, why we didn't bother going to the task level?
So for us with this, generally speaking, a task doesn't have a monetary value assigned to it in our system. So that the important metric here is the price to client field in the system, which comes over in our instance from Salesforce to say this is how much we charged for this project. This whole thing, and that it doesn't go all the way down to the task level. So for us, that wasn't useful. We just wanted to keep it at the project level.
Could we take a 3-minute sidebar and just look at how you've set up your rates?
Yeah, so we have so for us, that I'll get into this. So job roles. Let's talk job roles.
Let's talk.
Oh yeah, they are a lot of fun.
Text on this part of the video.
Yes. So we are a business that is based across 14 different offices, and technically any role could exist in any one of those offices. However, the cost of having people in India is very different to the cost of having people in Brooklyn. In fact, even inside regions, the difference, again, to use India as an example, between India and Singapore is very significant. And we needed, for various architectural reasons, to be applying our job roles applying our rates to job roles and not individuals. So we needed a rate card that would allocate for that. So because there's not much flexibility inside the job role object inside Workfront, we had to create the logic of having a job role and then a hyphen and then the country that job role is based in. So our base rate card is 50 odd roles that we then had to transpose to being across a further 14 offices, which is 700 job roles. I believe my math there is correct. Now, that is one of the things that breaks lots of other stuff inside Workfront. If you have to run your rate card like that, sure, you can hack it by having a job role for each role and location, but you're not going to be able to use things like Scenario Planner. You're not going to be able to use business cases because it breaks the UI of this functionality. And that is, frankly, very, very frustrating. Furthermore, there's no way of grouping job roles in any kind of hierarchy. So you're not just precluded from grouping them together by where they're located, or subcategorizing roles and having different rates for where people are located. You also can't group them upwards into departments. So we had to group our job roles using the description field, and that inside that description, it's going to give you the department that a job role belongs to. So the title, we have the name of the role and the location, and then the description contains the department as well.
Thank you so much, Ross. This is once again, you've exceeded my expectations for these calls. I really appreciate it.
Lovely. Thanks, Doug. Take care, mate.
Yeah, cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.